Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into the dawn phenomenon and what actually happens to your blood glucose levels when you're fasting. You might assume that if you stop eating entirely, your blood sugar should just steadily drop. Yet sometimes it does the exact opposite and rises, which leave a lot of people confused. I'm going to walk you through exactly why that happens and how it ties directly into something called the dawn phenomenon. When you measure your blood glucose, the natural expectation is that without food coming in, the numbers should fall. After all, eating pushes blood sugar up, so not eating should logically bring it down, and most of the time that's exactly what occurs. But every now and then people are shocked to discover that even though they haven't eaten a thing, their glucose is climbing. What's going on? The answer lies in your hormones. When you're not eating, your body still needs energy, so it has to free up glucose from its own storage sites to keep you going. During regular meals, all those calories you consume get stored away, some as glycogen in the liver, some as body fat. Then, when food stops coming in, your body has a remarkable ability to reverse the process. It breaks down that stored glycogen or taps into body fat, converts it back into glucose, and releases it into the bloodstream. That's the reason none of us drop dead overnight from lack of energy. We carry around this built-in reservoir of fuel, and a big part of that fuel shows up as blood glucose. Think of it like your kitchen at home. When you come back from the grocery store, you might put some food right on the dining room table, where it's immediately visible and ready to eat, but you also stash a bunch of it in the refrigerator or freezer. You can instantly see what's sitting on the table, but you have no idea how much is hidden away in the fridge until you open the door. If everything on the table disappears and you haven't gone shopping again, you might think there's nothing left to eat. But then you remember the fridge is fully stocked, and suddenly food appears again. Your blood glucose works the same way. There's always some sugar floating around in the bloodstream, the stuff on the table. But when you eat a lot, the body deliberately stores the excess out of sight in the liver and fat tissue, the refrigerator. When you stop eating, hormonal signals tell the body it's time to open the fridge and start bringing that stored glucose back into circulation. Those hormonal signals come from what we call counter-regulatory hormones, hormones that do the exact opposite of insulin. When you eat, insulin rises and tells the body store energy. When you don't eat, insulin falls, and a whole different set of hormones kicks in: noradrenaline, the sympathetic nervous system, growth hormone, and cortisol. All of these rise during fasting, and their job is to liberate stored glucose and push it back out into the blood. That's why your blood sugar can actually increase while you're fasting. Your body is actively being told to empty the storage tanks. This same process is responsible for the dawn phenomenon that happens to every single person on the planet. Somewhere between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m., right before you naturally wake up, your body, following its built-in circadian rhythm, releases a big surge of those same counter-regulatory hormones. The purpose is to pull glucose out of storage, flood the bloodstream with energy, and get you physically and mentally ready to start the day. That's why most people don't collapse the moment they roll out of bed, even if they haven't had breakfast yet. The body has already preloaded you with fuel. In completely healthy people without diabetes, the dawn phenomenon is normal, and the morning glucose rise is usually tiny and stays well within the normal range. But in many people with type 2 diabetes, that same normal hormonal surge can cause a dramatic spike in morning blood sugar, even though they haven't eaten anything since dinner. What you're seeing is simply an exaggerated version of the exact same counter-regulatory response that happens during fasting. So if you notice your blood glucose climbing while you're fasting, please don't panic or think you've done something wrong. It doesn't mean fasting is bad for you. It just means your body had a huge amount of stored glucose to begin with, an overflowing refrigerator. And once the hormonal signal comes to start unloading it, a lot comes out all at once. That temporary rise is actually proof that fasting is working. It's giving your body the opportunity to pull out excess stored sugar and finally burn it off. Another question I get asked all the time is whether prolonged fasting can cause dangerously low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. The short answer is, in someone who is not taking diabetes medications, almost never. Your body is extraordinarily good at keeping blood glucose within a safe, normal range no matter how long you go without food. It does this by converting liver glycogen and body fat back into glucose, and in extreme situations, it can even break down some of your own protein and turn that into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. As long as you're not on blood sugar-lowering drugs, fasting by itself should virtually never drive your glucose low enough to cause symptoms. However, if you are taking diabetes medications, especially insulin or drugs that stimulate insulin production, you have to be careful. During fasting, your body is already burning through its own glucose stores. If on top of that you're taking medication that forces glucose even lower, the two effects can stack and push your blood sugar too low. That's why anyone on diabetes medication who wants to start fasting must talk to their doctor first and very likely reduce or adjust their doses. Some people mistakenly think this means type 2 diabetics shouldn't fast at all. That's not true. It just means you have to monitor closely and adjust medications as needed. In fact, when you end up needing less medication because of fasting, that's a clear sign your diabetes is improving, which is fantastic news. Years ago, researchers wanted to test exactly how far they could push this. They took healthy men and fasted them for 30 to 60 days, extremely long fasts, and then deliberately try to crash their blood sugars by giving massive doses of intravenous insulin. In one study, they even gave people who had already been fasting for weeks an additional 20 units of insulin per day. Normal blood sugars hovered around 4.5 to 5.5 millimoles per liter, but with all that extra insulin, they managed to drive glucose down to levels we consider life-threatening, sometimes as low as 0.9 millimoles per liter, a point where most people will be having seizures or end up in intensive care. Yet every single one of these fasted individuals felt completely fine, not a symptom, not dizzy, not shaky, nothing. Why? Because after weeks of fasting, they were in deep nutritional ketosis. Their brains were running almost entirely on ketones instead of glucose. Glucose had become only a tiny fraction of the brain's total energy supply, so even when it dropped dramatically low, it simply didn't matter. Ketones stepped in and kept everything running smoothly. Another study from 1972 repeated the experiment with 9 people on a 60-day fast plus intravenous insulin, and again the blood sugars plummeted to almost unmeasurable levels. Yet nobody noticed a thing. So here's the takeaway for blood glucose during fasting. Most of the time it will trend downward and stay in the normal range. If you're on medications, work closely with your doctor to adjust doses so you don't overshoot into hypoglycemia. Occasionally your glucose will rise instead of fall, and that's perfectly normal. It just means your body is unloading a lot of stored sugar, which is exactly what you wanted to do. A temporary morning or fasting rise is not a sign to quit. It's a sign to keep going, because you're finally giving your body the chance to get rid of excess glucose it's been holding onto for years. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this cleared up a lot of confusion. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone else who might benefit. And if you could hit the like button so more people can find the video, I'd really appreciate it. See you in the next one.